reading, and I'll quickly introduce our panelists to you before I hand over to the chairperson for this session. We've got Mr. Balagopal, who began his career as a publisher. His first assignment was as general manager, Prabhat Book House. Since then, he's held multiple important positions, which includes, among others, as Director, Kerala Educational Development and Employment Society, an institution functioning for rural employment generation under the aegis of the Khadi and Village Industries Commission. Mr. Subir Shukla is the Principal Coordinator, Group Ignis, which comprises Ignis ERG, which is the consulting company, Ignis Pehel, which is the non-profit, and Ignis Outreach, which is on low-cost educational publishing. Before this, he was the Educational Quality Advisor to the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, and developed the quality framework for the implementation of the Right to Education and Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Mr. Himanshu Giri, who has over 20 years of work experience in the field of publishing. He's an expert in setting up operations, sales, marketing, and outreach teams to scale up operations on libraries, and he has vast exposure on book development and distribution markets in India and the Asia Pacific. Currently, he leads the team at Pratham Books, which is India's largest non-profit children's book publishing house, as CEO. Ms. Geeta Malhotra has been working with Read India since June 2008 and has helped bring 25 Read centers, which are community library and resource centers, to life in about 10 states across India. Ms. Malhotra constantly performs networking for partnerships and fundraising, apart from outreach activities to bring the best training and capacity building programs to Read centers while overseeing all operations in India. Mr. Saurav Banerjee, Country Director of Room to Read India, an international non-profit working in the areas of early grade literacy and girls' education. As head of the organization, Mr. Banerjee provides strategic direction at the country level and leads a multidisciplinary team of over 500 staff across 8 states of India. To chair this session and to take the lead in discussing promoting the culture of reading, we have Dr. Shubhangi Sharma, the Executive Director of IPLM. She has rich experience in program management, partnership development, policy advocacy, and knowledge management, focusing on education and gender equity. And over the years, she has worked with policymakers, networks, and campaigns, civil society and academia in urban and rural contexts. Dr. Sharma?
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you had a very, very good lunch and you are ready for this very interesting session, right? Okay. So, because you have been for last 2 days, we have been having a lot of very, very traditional panel discussions. So I thought we have such a distinguished panel in front of us today for this particular session that it would be worthwhile for us to not just go by them making some statements and we asking 1 or 2 questions. Instead, if we could engage them in interesting discussion, it would be more apt for this particular session. So we have devised the session in a manner in which I would be posing certain questions to our distinguished speakers, the panelists, and they would respond. And by the end of the session, if there is any time left, I would also like to open it for all of you to ask any questions which you might be having around the topic of this particular session. So without wasting any further time, because the title of today's session is Promoting Culture of Reading. And my first question goes to Saurav. Saurav, as organizations and individuals, we have been talking quite a lot nowadays about culture of reading. Earlier we used to say promotion of reading, right? And now the vocabulary has changed and we are speaking a lot about promoting culture of reading. What exactly comes to your mind as an individual and a professional working in this space when we say we are working towards promoting culture of reading?
Thank you, Shubhangi. I think that's a question that's been kind of bothering us for quite some time now at Room to Read also. So the issue is that it's not that people are not reading. People are reading a lot. I mean, we are in an age today where it's difficult to get through a day's business without reading. You're reading signboards, you're reading billboards, you're reading WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, so everything is. So there's a lot of reading happening. But then what is it that we would want to be called a culture of reading, which I think is more to do with reading, but most of the reading that we do now is either for retrieving information, so you are just getting information, that's why you read, and also it's kind of forceful reading, because you're forced to read and that's why you read. Vis-a-vis, a culture of reading is something where we would expect people to be reading voluntarily, people to be reading for the pleasure of reading. So I think that's the key thing that differentiates between a culture of reading and the reading that we see everywhere today. So, and when you talk of these terms of like voluntary reading or pleasure of reading, of course, somewhere we are also talking about habit of reading. And this habit of reading certainly is something that develops from a very early age, and it should develop from an early age, because then that's the right time when you actually pick up children and get them to built into a habit of reading. See, any of us and most of us who are like vociferous readers, if we kind of reflect back, you will always find that it's either somewhere in the school where a teacher had read out to you or your parents have read out to you. So that's where you started building up your habit of reading. And I think that's carried through the life. So I think, so one of the significant component of a culture of reading is a situation or an education system which promotes an development of a habit of reading at an early age. The second part of culture of reading, I guess, is also the importance that society at large provides to reading, to authors, to so for example, so if I can take like I remember like in my earlier days, in my younger days in West Bengal, because I belong from there, and it was always said that West Bengal had a culture of reading. So two things I can remember which made it different. One is, in any big event that we had in the society, a local author would be the chief guest, which is very different from what you see now, where it's either a politician or a businessman who becomes it. So it also shows the respect that society at large accords to education, reading, and all of that. Similarly, like during the Durga Puja time, every author in Bengal would bring out new stories, which would be lapped up by people. So I think these are indicators. I mean, I am not saying this is the only thing that goes into a culture of reading, but these are kind of indicators which define a society which has a culture of reading, I would say.
Yeah. So interesting. That brings me to my next question. I mean, obviously, all of us who are today in this room and on the panel, we probably come from the school of thought which believes that India is not reading enough. And therefore, we are talking about this whole notion of promoting culture of reading, making societies to read, community to read. But, you know, there is a simultaneous, and I've been of late talking to many people, and there is another school of thought which simultaneously goes on. And that school of thought says that it is not probably justified to say that India is not reading. India, in fact, is reading. Our problem is that we don't know as to what they are reading, or we probably don't know what do they want to be reading. So I just wanted to have your thoughts on this, Subir, if you could put a light on which school of thought you primarily subscribe to, why, and do you have any new school of thought which you have been encountering with and which you would want to share with us?
So, I'm of the view that we are not reading enough, and for several reasons. One is that you need to see reading in a certain perspective. My perspective is that our world, the future of our world, depends on what our children read today. And what we as a country, as a society are going to be 20, 30 years down the line is basically already happening in the minds of children. And so if you see it from that perspective, are they reading? Are they reading enough? Are they reading what they should be reading? That's a question worth seriously looking at. Are they reading things which are making them think, analyze, question, imagine, invent, innovate? I don't get the feeling that that is happening. I spend a lot of time traveling in the field, interacting with children, with adolescents, with teachers, with adults in rural areas, remote places, urban areas, in slums. Most of the time, the people that I come across are not really reading. They read very limited, either instrumental kind of things, or maybe a few entertainment things, which is okay. But reading which feeds your mind, reading which feeds your soul, that is not something which is happening. And what I would like to see is that, we have a kind of film culture. Everybody wants to see films and talks about them. We have a cricket culture, right? Everybody wants to know what's happening or misses their office because cricket is going on. But nobody ever does that for a book, or very few people do at any rate. So I believe that there is an enormous scope needed for children to read more. And of course, all the data that we have from schools, the learning levels that we have. So it's not only that children are not reading, but they are not able to read. So, for instance, when in 5 states, when we assessed reading levels in class 9 students, they were actually at class 4 or 5 level. So it's unlikely that they would be able to read material which is of their own age level. So that's a kind of challenge that we face. So there is not enough for them to read. There is not enough of the kind that they should read. It's not accessible. It's not available at the rates in which they can buy. It's not available in the places where they live. And it's not valued and it's not being encouraged. So therefore, I believe that people are not reading enough.
So agree. But I believe when we talk about promoting culture, it's not only about creating demand. So doing certain things by which people become interested in reading. But it is also about ensuring supply of right kind of reading material to the people who don't probably might be having, despite their eagerness and willingness to read, they might not be having right kind of reading material available. So this whole question of accessibility and availability of right kind of reading material becomes very, very important. And I wanted to understand, because Himanshu, Pratham Books is very much into this whole process of making right kind of books accessible and available to people. What are your thoughts on the supply side of this whole aspect of reading?
So I think I very much agree with what Subir said, that it's a lot of things have been, we impose on our children to read, and we want them to read this. We never want to know what they would like to read. And the second question is, which is very important, and especially when we talk of the formative years, is reading to them in their mother tongue. One is that there is a scarcity of good quality children's literature, and second, it is not available in multiple Indian languages. We talk of the local dialects, it's absolutely missing. So, as an organization which has actually been born and brought up out of the fact that there is a need for building quality children's literature, we have focused a lot on producing and allowing access to books in mainstream Indian languages. We've worked in a lot of tribal languages. We've created innovative means of access. Today, we are at a juncture where we are really looking at content being delivered as the prime, thing, and the format really doesn't matter. And when I say this, I'm saying that we've born as a print publisher. Today, we are offering, let's say, 100 languages, 5,000 books, and we are offering them across digital. We are offering audio stories. So, which brings me to another interesting thing. How do you really bring about an excitement, engagement in the classroom? How do you really say that, today we will read books and tomorrow we will listen to books, and the third day we'll watch books, and the fourth day we will enact books? How do you really bring that 30, 40 minutes of a library period, so to say, as an engaging? And we've tried lots of ways of giving access. We've in fact initiated one of India's only crowdfunding platform which kind of connects the donors and the non-profits who are not able to establish or create physical libraries. It enables them to raise a library for free. And I'm happy to share that we've distributed, let's say, about 100,000 odd books to 200 organizations in the far-flung areas of India where it's beyond a publisher's reach to really go out in the Arunachal Pradesh and the Lehs and Ladakh to help them give them books, to develop books in the languages like Bhuti language, which is spoken in Leh and Ladakh, Kora and Santhali, which is in West Bengal and Jharkhand. We've done together with Subir, we worked on a project in bringing out books in Odia tribal languages. So I think it all lies that you have to give child the comfort language for him to become a reader from a non-reader.
Sure. So before I go to Geeta and Balagopalji on this, because sort of you come from an organization which is working in so many states, in so many schools, engaging with school libraries, community libraries. How do your organization and you approach this whole challenge of availability and accessibility of right kind of reading materials?
So I think, as I said, the whole issue of building up a culture starts at the school level. And it's a fact, whatever we say, that large proportion of the schools do not have, let alone a library. It doesn't have anything except a textbook. And the textbook is oftentimes not really something that the child would want to read. So it is a big challenge that the public education system is facing. Now, in the schools that we work in, of course, we set up a library and we source grade and developmentally appropriate children's literature for the children. But then we also realize that we are only present in a very small section of the schools. Ultimately, for this to become a movement, to develop into a culture, ultimately the government has to take initiative to ensure that adequate amount of reading materials is available at the school level, which is currently not the case. And then, of course, once the material is available, which you will probably see in some elite urban schools and in the cities, you will have libraries stocked with material. But even then, there we see the other problem where the teachers do not know what to do with the material. This whole idea of reading out to a children, to kind of discuss a book, to talk about a book, enact a book, is just missing. So obviously, even with the whole stock of books, the children are still not developing a habit of reading because this whole engagement of the teacher with the book is somewhere missing. So I think we are, in the schools that we work in, we work on both these areas. Get the material availability of the material, and then work with the teacher on how to use this material, how to read out to the children, how we do a read aloud session, how we do a shared reading session, and so on and so forth. And I guess it's not only Room to Read, but many other organizations who work in this space, like Katha, Pratham, they have all been doing that. But even with all our collective things, we're still a small section of the total volume that we have to reach out to. So somewhere the government has to step in and address some of these issues which we still find lacking.
Yeah. Wonderful. Geeta, obviously, this question very beautifully pans out to you. You work with women, right? And when we are talking about promoting culture of reading and we are talking about societies and communities, women are very important part of that whole community. But when it comes to reading by the woman, reading for the woman, and making available right kind of reading materials for women, which actually satisfies their specific needs along with the general needs as well. Your organization has been doing beautiful work with women, engaging them with skills, and alongside also promoting reading habits, reading culture. We would just want to understand how you are actually approaching this whole reading aspect with the women whom you're working with in your community libraries where you have interventions.
See, in the community libraries, we have a special program for early childhood. And the children come there for reading. And the women are the mothers of those children. because we want to work with the women, especially for building their skill, for earning better money, to continue their children's education. With mothers, when they come to our center, they see their children reading and they don't know how to read. What their children are reading, they don't know. So the interest develops in them. If my child is reading, and then we do a lot of sensitization workshops with them, that how will you continue to know what your child is reading? So for you also reading is very important. And the interest develops. And when they do livelihood programs, they don't know how to write, how to read, what they are doing, how they are going to present what they are doing to the outside world. So even they are not able to calculate the money which they are earning. So we introduce the habit of reading, writing at least their names, because they have to open a bank account after all, and then count their money. So the stories which came out was after reading, after we did the reading exercises with them. The mother said that I got medicine for my child, but I gave the wrong medicine because I didn't know what medicine it is. So she was just labeling them and she forgot what label it was. But after reading, at least she can write the name, which medicine has to be given for what disease. The second is that they are now able to count the money which they are buying ration from the market, which is very, very important. So that's totally grassroots level. We are bringing them up to a level, and now we are making them entrepreneurs, rural entrepreneurs. And we are now teaching them to write their own stories. So it's a journey which they started from just understanding the words and now making sentences on their own. Simple sentences, but it's not easy. It's long journey which we are hand-holding them and bringing them from one level to another and to the other level. Now children and mother together come to the center, to the libraries, and we have books for all. And I would like to also say that the culture of reading has to be developed from the beginning of the child when he or she is going to the school. But the culture has to be Bible.
Yeah.
That is very important. And mother plays a very, very important role in that.
Wonderful. So, Subir, this brings the question to you. You have been of late talking a lot about the inculcation of the reading habit or reading culture in the children as young as the age group of 0 to 3. Yeah. One day, absolutely right. So you know, can you? I mean, you know, it's very, very interesting. As a country, we have in general probably not paid attention to people getting into habit and culture of reading. I mean, you know, let alone the school books and school reading material. So this whole aspect of making sure that children as young as one day are able to, or probably inducted into the into this whole thing. What is the thought and the idea behind it? And
okay, thank you. Firstly, I agree with Geeta that we really need to develop not reading children but reading families. Reading is a family thing; it's not an individual thing alone. But on the issue of reading, introducing books, not so much reading, introducing books for the very young. Basically, there are 3 or 4 research elements that you need to take into account. One is that the greatest development in children happens through their sensory organs, the greatest cognitive development. And unfortunately, their visual ability is the last ability to develop. So in fact, when you start with very young children, and you hold a child in your lap and you read, then the child is listening. The child can smell the book, child can feel the book, and see some visuals. It's important that the visuals should not be like photographs, but should be black and white preferably. Children can't process color. Actually, at this below 3, they see it more like a blur. High contrast color. But the important thing is that they should listen to the adult speaking. And several things happen. One is, of course, their brain, their mind develops a great deal. The feeling that somebody held you securely, it imparts such an emotional basis that for the rest of your life, when you read, actually you're capturing that in the background in your mind. So once you learn to read in somebody's lap, basically reading remains with you. But if you're taught in a formal classroom and somebody raps you and says, "Padhna bhi nahi aata tere ko," and shouts at you, then learning of reading is an unpleasant thing which remains with you the rest of your life, and you read only to pass exams or for such purposes. You never read to grow as an individual or a person. But there's one other very substantial difference. When you read aloud, you talk about what is there in a picture. The mother talks about it. Maybe one circle which is a bit like a sun or a roti or a moon, and she talks about it. She says many words. So what happens to children who listen to this is that by the time they are 6 years old, believe it or not, they listen to as many as 10 lakh spoken words more. It may be the same words many times, but 10 lakh is the number. And you get exposed to a diverse range of language, from formal language to language for description to language for, narrating a story, etc., etc. So the kind of language development that you get, the kind of entry that you have into reading is so much more advanced compared to a child who doesn't get it, that, believe it or not, that is a gap that cannot be filled up for the rest of your life. So in the US, if you go to a pediatrician, they will advise you on nutrition, on vaccination, and on reading. If you take a 1-year-old child. Which is why our team, Ignas Pahel in Varanasi, has started a Read to Babies program. We are getting young mothers in about 50 villages, and our volunteer reads aloud a book, and of course then there's not much to read actually. You don't need words, you just need to talk a lot. You need to take a picture and talk about it and get the child into a different imaginary world. That's what the child has to learn. So, which is why we are going into it in depth, and we hope that the kind of educational issues and problems we have later will be much less.
I'll come back. This is very interesting. I'll come back to this question further because I wanted to probe it a little more. But we have with us Mr. Balagopal as well. And Mr. Balagopal represent an organization which has been like pioneer in the literacy movement in India, and the kind of work organization has done in this space is actually exemplary. And recently, Mr. Balagopal, you have started this multi-stakeholder Mission India 22, which recently got launched. I just wanted to understand from you what exactly under this mission you are trying to achieve vis-a-vis promotion of culture of reading in the country.
Basically, I am against this culture. Culture is second thing. The culture is for the upper class people. I want the skilling. The reading skill has to be developed. Because in the country, 40% of the population is underprivileged and they are illiterate also. So unless we wipe off the illiteracy, nothing can be achieved. Then only the culture comes. First, we must develop the skill to read, for which literacy is required, writing and literacy. And then we have to inculcate the reading habit among the underprivileged, because we focus on underprivileged. And your slogan, reaching the unreached. You asked me regarding this mission. The mission is to reach the unreached. We are targeting 300 million people, especially in the Bimaru states of the country, UP, Bihar, Orissa, and Madhya Pradesh, other parts. Literacy is very bad. Literacy, even the women literacy is only 40%. And they have been exploited. There we have to penetrate. We have to penetrate and give them the skill to read and give them proper materials, because there is no dearth of materials. Materials are there. But we have to inculcate the reading habit, and we have to foster the book-mindedness also. Because unless they start reading, reading is for empowerment, not only for pressure and other things. It is for empowerment. Their knowledge acquisition. And when they start reading, they can have a very good life also. They can lead a meaningful and what you call healthy life also. Because there is a saying, if you are hungry, take the books. Then somebody was asking, suppose you are hungry, can you tear off the books and take the paper? No. If you are hungry, by reading the books, you will acquire knowledge by which how your hunger can be removed. That is the meaning, because the culture is secondary. First, we have to develop the skill to read. In fact, we started this reading month, reading day celebration as a commemoration to Mr. P.N. Panikar's annual day. Started with 30%. Now it has become after 22 years, no? After 15 years, it has become universal and it has become a pupils movement. We don't want anybody to pressurize. No government can do it. Government cannot do anything. Only pupils movement, pupils initiative. Pupils-led movement has to be done with the publishers, the libraries, etc. Today morning, so many people are telling the libraries are libraries have got certain limitations. No. If the librarian takes the interest, he can take the books to the masses, and he can read out, and he can inculcate the reading habit. Because people should be the poorest, because our target is the lowest strata of the people. They have to be skilled to reading. By skilling them, they will, as I rightly said, they will be empowered. Only empowered nation can succeed, because though we are telling that we are a developing state, our development is very bad, because when we go to the education, the quality of education, somebody was telling about the quality of education. The quality of education is very bad in our country. Why? Because there is no reading nation. That's why we want to reach 300 million people by 2022 with the message of reading and writing. Then the literacy part. The literacy has to be the first thing. Now, because of this, when we started this digital reading in 2002, Kerala was the first state to start the digital reading. In 2002, everybody was laughing at us. How you can develop this digital reading? Now it has become a reality. Now like that, now everybody is having the mobile phone. By the latest survey, census, India will, by 2020, 87% of the Indians will have smartphones. Once your smartphone, all this internet-enabled reading is possible. Not only that, now the Google handwriting application has come. That we are promoting in UP, because everybody can, with their hand, they can put lines, etc. By writing the lines, they can start making alphabets. By having the alphabets, the printed alphabets will come in the Google handwriting. By educating them, by developing the skill to write the alphabets, they will start reading also. Now these WhatsApp has come. It's a very popular exercise. We want to inculcate the habit of using the mobile phone by touching the alphabet or giving SMS. That's the only thing, because in digital literacy also, we are our target is our aim is also very we don't have much ambition. Let them start writing their alphabets. Not writing the name. Let them read the bus name. When they go to the bus station or railway station, let them read the signboards. That way, slowly we can make them empowered. Then only speak about culture.
Yeah. Wonderful. Here I wanted you in, Geeta, when it comes to inducting women, and especially he has actually introduced a very beautiful word here. He's saying that even before we talk about inculcating culture of reading, we need to talk about skill of reading, right? So when it comes to women, because of their very special social, cultural status from where they come from, I mean, your task becomes even much more challenging when it comes to skilling women in the habit of reading. So if you could share with us some of the experiences and processes which you have been engaging with in order to make sure that the women who come to your centers are able to really sail through the process very smoothly.
See, when we are talking about the culture, according to my experience, first we have to develop a thinking process. Why it is required.
Yeah.
What is the need? And we have to build in the process of thinking in them that it's not only for today, it's for your long life. These things will come in a big way in your life if you just start now. Then access, which is very important. Many of the women or children don't come to read because they don't have accessibility. Many organizations like us, who are sitting here also, are trying to reach the unreached. But even access doesn't mean for them. You have to handhold them for reading. Then again, there is a process of developing that exercise with them. When the need is defined, accessibility is defined, we are present with them, and then continuity of the process. It's not 1 day or 1 month or 1 year exercise. It's a continuous process. And you have to find the local people who are the leaders in this, who can help you to take your mission forward. That is also the secondary exercise which we have to do. After creating all this, then we have to imbibe in them. Yes, this is your future, this is your future, your family's future, your children's future. And let them realize the importance of that. When we bring multiple things at the platform, which we are offering them in a silver plate, I should say that, I think I don't find any challenge why they don't come. And by the way, we have done with 10,000 women through 12 community libraries, so through 40 community libraries and resource centers in 12 states. It's a long, long journey which we cover, but it's a process. I will not say that it's a time duration which we spend with them.
I would again like to go back. So this is a very interesting aspect which you have brought in, but I would again like to go back to this whole question of there are people who want to read, and sort of this question is primarily to you and to Himanshu. People want to read, but do we really know what do they want to read? And if not, how do we get to know better about it? And has there been any experience within Room to Read where you have been able to really, really take this whole agenda through?
Not really, actually. I mean, I agree that there needs to be much more research than that's available currently in this area. Of course, when we develop our own books, we publish a small section of books, and I'm sure when Pratham does their books also, there's a process through which we try to see what people are wanting, and therefore we kind of develop books accordingly. But if you're hinting at large-scale research to kind of identify what people are asking, what their interests are, and whether the supply side is matching up to that, I guess that's not. Not that I know of. Himanshu might.
Yeah, sure.
So I think, some of the areas we had identified, for example, and I can tell you with respect to 0 to 3 years, for example, the basic years, books like, we have something called flashcards. Now children are very much interested and they get engaged with that. We introduced something called spotting books, where, which helps you build your vocabularies. You're given a picture and you have to find and spot things and people, places and things like that. So these are at a and there are hardly any good, material which is available at this age or it gets published. At the level of a middle school child, for example, we've seen a lot of interest as a demand from the children on the STEM related subjects, which is the science, technology, maths. And we have created a lot of that material, but yes, I think, like I said, previously, that we have to really see and leave. We had done a pilot in Bangalore with a sort of a control group and otherwise, and we left a group of children with books, who had no access to books, and you suddenly see that they get so much of excitement and enjoyment being with the books. We, on the digital side, we gave children in East Delhi, we gave a group of about 100 children around 50 books to read on a tablet and gave them 30 days. And you'll be surprised, and these are like up to ages 10, they came back in 2 weeks' time and they had read all books. So we had to give them another set. But I'm saying there is an interest provided we leave it to them and we don't really impose on them.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think that's the truth. A book is being bought in India because it has to teach you something. If it doesn't teach you, if it doesn't give you a moral, it's a waste of money.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know whether reading the Enid Blytons, the Tintins, the Madhu Muskans, the Parags, we've read in our childhood, we've learned anything, I don't remember.
Absolutely. Yeah. Subir, you wanted to come in here?
Thank you. No, I quite agree that there's insufficient information and we do need to do a lot of work on this. One area that I'm more involved with is textbook development. And as you know, we print millions of copies of textbooks. When I worked in UP, we printed 1 crore copies of each book, which is multiple times over compared to any children's book. So actually the children's literature in India is what children read in textbooks.
Right.
So when you make textbooks, you really need to figure out what do children want. And when you make any kind of material for any learner. For example, when we work for women, and the typical material for women will talk about body, health, and so on. But when we ask women, what is it that you would like to know? They would say things like, we have too many rats in our home. How do we get rid of rats?
Yeah.
So they have a very different need altogether. Children too have a very different need. So various things were done. For example, a set of 20 stories was taken to children and they were read aloud or given to children to read. And it turned out that there were only 2 stories which children wanted to read again and again. So when we analyzed them, we found out that it was, there was a kind of emotional connect. Like there was a story about a chick who, when he's hatched from its egg, its mother is not there. So he goes looking for its mother and sees a dog and says, oh, you must be my mother. So the dog says, no, I have 4 legs, your mother has 2 legs. So then he sees a boy, oh, you have 2 legs, you must be my mother. So that kind of story was so much more valued by children. So slowly, in the textbook development, there is some understanding of what children like. One other point I just want to mention briefly is that in our interaction with children all over, we find that it's not overtly stated, but slowly children figure out that much of the children's literature is not about them. So if you happen to be a very poor child, if you happen to be a street child, if you happen to be a tribal child, a migrant child, a child with disability, a girl from a Muslim family who's poor, basically, there is no book about you or your life. You don't figure in it. If you look at most of children's literature, it is all about children who are from better resourced families.
Yeah.
Because we sell to them. No? Which is the reason why, after so many years, like our team has decided to set up our own publishing firm. We are going to publish for those for whom nobody publishes.
Yeah.
We are starting Manan books, and we feel that, catering to what children really need or want is absolutely vital. It's not happening enough, and I wish that there were some large-scale surveys now with digital technology, like for example, what people want to know. You have IPLM, which is, so if now that you're digitizing records, you could easily say in 40,000 libraries what kind of books people are asking for more. And of course, they will initially be mainly competitive exam books, but slowly as you get into literature, you may get that kind of information. So we are beginning to get the means to understand what readers really want and what they need. I think it's high time we did it. We made use of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Now, regarding this the reading material, because in most of the schools and education institutions, they go by the textbook only. They're not reading. They're not reading.
Right.
They go by guides, etc. Nobody is reading properly the books. Books are not used properly. But there, IPLM has to take a lead by providing study aids like that. Some books which are very joyful to read, joyful for their to take forward their studies. In fact, we want to first inculcate reading habit, and we have to promote this in-depth reading also. They must start thinking. Then only we will have a vibrant nation, vibrant democracy also. They must also start thinking, and they must do themselves also. Not they should go with any political parties or with any groups. They must have their own identity, and they have to develop, and that thinking habit has to be developed. That can be derived only through in-depth reading. You have to promote in-depth reading, because in Kerala they used to say reading is died. So there is no scope for the books industry. No, but now publishers are every day new books are coming, and there are a lot of sales also. Previously it was bought from libraries also. Now the people are buying books, and they have become a habit to buy books and keep it their own. So we want to, the books are there, publications are there, but we have to inculcate first skilling and then develop an in-depth reading habit. Then they can have their own, they can build up their personality, and they can be, because we want to promote this self-employment. This self-employment and skill development can be done only through, not through academic books, only through journal books. IPLM should take the initiative of providing some journal books to your libraries also. That it can be done by digital version, because now everybody wants digital version, because that will be more interesting also. And this Kindle, now Kindle is getting much attraction. Students are going to stick on to Kindle rather than their academic books. So IPLM, with your resources, vast resources, and you are now good contact with the authorities, etc., you must provide good Kindles to the children, underprivileged children, because your slogan is reaching the unreached. You must reach the unreached with some technological input, that by which we have to develop interest in reading, passion for reading. Then they will slowly develop, and that will lead to a developed India. That's why our Prime Minister, he wanted to reach 300 million by 2022 to make a vibrant India, so that India can be a developed nation. Only by having a knowledgeable India, we can achieve our dream of having a vibrant India.
Yeah. So in this particular session, I was deliberately not making mention of public libraries because I thought we throughout we are talking about public libraries and how to make these libraries vibrant and inclusive. And I thought subtly this session should address that particular issue. But now that Mr. Balagopal has brought in public libraries in between, I would make it a little more sort of holistic. And, this question is, these are going to be my last 2-3 questions, and I would really want any one of you who wishes to take that up. I mean, obviously when we are talking about communities, we are not talking about a particular segment of the society. We are not saying children or adults or mother or father. We're talking about society as a whole. I just wanted to understand from you as to what could be the role of the overall knowledge ecosystem in promotion of culture of reading, in addition to the culture which gets developed in the child when one is actually listening stories when he is in the mother's womb, or, when the father is petting on the back and telling stories. I wanted to understand the role of organized institutional mechanisms in promoting the culture of reading. Whoever wishes to take this question is welcome. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think there is serious scope and role and necessity actually for organized institutional efforts in this regard. One is that if we are able to somehow make this shift, which I think is the biggest or most difficult shift, libraries are very forbidding sort of places. Can they become a little more welcoming, colorful, place for you to sit and be what you are rather than being told to behave in a certain way? If that can happen, then there are numerous possibilities. For example, I would like to see a library where if you are not a literate person, but you want to know something, somebody is there who can read it out to you. There is no reason to say that the library is only for those who can read. Library is for anybody who wants access to any text. And you only need an intermediary, and local children, volunteers can easily do this kind of thing. Libraries should have a weekly day where it's a read aloud day, somebody is there who narrates a story and that book is available, or who provides some information and that book is available. There are very specific requirements that different groups have. Youth want to know about different vocational aspects. Farmers want to know about better farming. People want to know about legal issues. So there are, it's possible to have all kinds of different exciting, interesting events where people can get access to the kind of information they need. For example, right now, a whole lot of petty traders want to know about GST. It's very easy for a library to organize somebody to come there and do that and have that. So, it's the question is, are we being responsive rather than passive and expecting people to just come? So if we are able to make that shift to a proactive approach, where we go out to anticipate people's needs, demands, and create a culture where that is happening, slowly that creates a relationship between the users of a library in a larger sense and that library itself. Once that relationship happens, within that, any number of different activities at different times of the year can take place with a large volunteer background. So that's the way I would see it emerging as an inclusive knowledge hub.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Because if we want to promote this culture of reading, we must have a pupils-led movement. Because none of the government organization or any organization can make a difference. The pupils-led movement has to be initiated. That is a community. Community has to come forward, and then only what IPLM visualizes and reaching the unreached can be achieved. Because we cannot blame the librarians alone. Because the community, when the community express their need, it will automatically come.
Yeah.
We have to have a community-led initiative. IPLM should take the initiative. That's why we have initiated this reading mission last year. And that is we are not taking the lead. We are only a facilitating agency. We want to join in this movement, IPLM, Read India, all the agencies which are promoting this, even all the publishers, everybody should be there. We are only just leading it, and we are only a platform.
Yeah.
That's why, because reading cannot be organized through government channels or some other channels.
Yeah.
The people's-led movement has to be initiated.
Fair enough. Geeta also wanted to. Yeah, sure, please.
I'll just have a, because we're talking of public libraries, I happened to visit one of the libraries in Karnataka in Yadgir district, and that really, I try and mention it everywhere because I think having to have a well-resourced library, a very good resource who really believes in promoting reading and is informative. I met this librarian at the district library, and he was full of information, and you could see that the library was very engaging. There were almost 10-15 people sitting right there at 9:30 in the morning, reading newspapers. The person was so informative to say that I subscribe to 12 periodicals, 7 newspapers, my library has 26,000 books, we have this, we have X number of members, and I'm here from 8 to 8. And though there are different timings, but I volunteer. So I'm saying that's an ideal vision to sort of a model library where we have such resources and such wonderful people working.
Yeah.
I would also like to add that our innovators are doing excellent work from public libraries because they are sending reports and sharing reports to us, and they are engaging people in a big way.
Yeah.
And they are not only addressing the culture of reading, but the culture of promoting reading by involving community stakeholders.
Yeah.
The 3 generations are coming to the libraries, the children, the adolescent, like mothers and fathers, and the grandparents also. And they are organizing innovative programs by involving grandparents to tell the story to the children, and the mothers are coming for various other activities. The time has changed now. The change is coming also in the public libraries. I would also like to quote an example because we are a non-for-profit organization, we don't have any restrictions as such. Now the libraries decide on their own which day they have to close. It's not only Saturday and Sunday. They decide. And Saturday, Sunday, because there is a great football and all the families are at home, they can visit to the library as a whole family, not the individuals. That is the culture which is being promoted across the centers. The other thing is that many people feel they go to the temple, the elder community. Now libraries being the safe space, the families don't have to get permission from the elder person to come to the library. So it's a safe space. And because it's a safe space, and when we, dovetail the process of the culture of reading among the families, they are encouraged to go to the libraries instead of temples.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is the experience which I am sharing, because I have witnessed that across the country. The elder woman would like to come and sit in the library and somebody can read to them.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And many women say that we would like to read the Quran before we go to Almighty, because then I'll get moksha. And the families sitting in the library, the same daughter-in-law and the granddaughter is reading Quran to her and teaching her how to read. This is the cultural change which comes and promotes the culture of reading.
Beautiful. Saurabh, would you like to say?
No, I think I'll just add, I won't add, I will just reiterate basically the point that Subir made. So there's need to look at the services that's being offered. I mean, it need not be just a place for stocking books, but offer other services which are more needed by youth, by other sections of the society. And also to kind of strengthen the linkage between the library, public library, and the community. So it becomes a rallying point for the community to engage in literary activities, whether it be literacy acquisition, or it be storytelling, or it can be a various kind of services that's being offered. So which kind of strengthens the link between the community and the public library. So that could be other areas that.
Wonderful. I think I have a couple of minutes more. So I just wanted to ask my last question, and then if anybody from the audiences wishes to ask you anything. Sort of at the beginning of your statement, you actually talked about policy, right? You said that, at individual level, we as organizations are doing whatever we can do within our limited resources, but there is a need for policy level intervention in order to take this Herculean task ahead. I just wanted you to put a bit more light on what exactly we are asking from the policy arena.
So I will restrict myself to the earlier age group, the school level part of it, and there could be additional things that's needed at a higher level also. But at the school level, I think what's really missing is, the first thing is availability of reading materials. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult to expect children would start reading and reading fluently, whether if you do not have any reading materials available in the school. And most of the kids coming to the school are first generation learners. They almost have nothing in their home to kind of no print in their home. This is the first time they're exposed to print when they're coming to school. And if you do not have materials, I mean, how can we ever expect children to be reading? So I think the first major policy thing that the government has to do is to invest more on materials, getting materials to the school, which is not happening. That's one. And the second part, of course, as I said, is training of teachers on how to use the library. Just having the books sitting there doesn't make sense. So you have to actually train the teachers on how to make use of these books. So these two, I mean, if these two happens, that I will be more than enough happy. And there would be other things, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. Please do it. Yeah.
The training of teachers is very, very important, and the resources should be made available. But when we go to the teachers, they have marathon tasks to do. Because teachers are considered in the government schools in the rural areas to do ample work, and they just give 10% of their time to the children. That is really mind-boggling.
Just one point. Yeah. Sure. So, in fact, one of the things, as far as the advocacy. Advocacy is concerned, I think together we formed a consortium of quality children's publisher, And in fact, Subir and I and many of the publishers and educationists were part of this consortium. We built a document called Guide to Good Books. So, which is like, how do you really identify a good reading material? And, with the government infrastructure, you really don't know who is sitting where, who becomes, what forms a committee. So, if you have a ready reckoner or a document which helps you source right kind of quality children's literature, we did that. I think National Book Trust and NCRT and many other organizations were part of it. We tried circulating the document, but unfortunately it didn't really took off the way it was expected. But documents and exercises like that can really help reach quality reading material into the classrooms.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
I'll just be very brief.
Yeah.
Two things. One, India has about 7 million teachers. So you have thousands and thousands of teachers in every district, which means that the public libraries can easily become very important hubs for teachers to meet, satisfy their academic needs, interact with peers, and then translate that into their learning in school and among children.
Yeah.
So I would love to see that interaction between teachers and libraries. And secondly, having engaged with policy, I was the education quality advisor, so I've repeatedly found that we talk of inputs when making policy. We need to talk about outcomes. So if there were to be a policy on public libraries, what is the kind of outcome you're looking for in terms of the nature of engagement? Who is engaged in reading? How many of them? For what time? To what extent? I know it's a little deterministic, but if we don't know what is the result of what we do, how will we end up do what we want to do? So there is a need to sort of work in some way to identify what will be the outcome of our work with libraries. And as that is identified, then it will become better and easier to form policy.
Now the library system, the youngsters are not at all attracted to the libraries. That's the main thing. We have to attract the youngsters so that our concept of library has to be changed. Thanks to IPLM that you are taking some initiative now because we want to make it as a knowledge hub, as a place for the youngsters, for job hunting, for job information, for better revenue earning, for better financial gains, etc. Because that place should be a real hub by which the overall development of the youngsters can be assured. Moreover, regarding the materials, I must say that even our Rajaram Mohan Rai Foundation is supporting all the libraries with the best quality books. But the problem is nobody is reading.
Yeah.
That's a problem. In schools and colleges in Kerala, I can very well say most of the libraries are closed.
Yeah.
There we have to inculcate a mindset. Then only we can start. Because we have to attract the youngsters to the library. And when they see all these activities, then they will start reading 1 page, 2 page, 3 page like that.
Wonderful.
Then only we can change the entire system. The inclusive growth can be achieved only through this type
Well
of,
said, Mr. Balagopal. I was a little, the talk was so engaging that I thought it has only been half an hour. I don't know about you, but it was wonderful talking to all of them. But I am just told, to my utter despair, that we have overshot 15 minutes. So still I'll take the advantage of my being on the chair and would actually ask if any of you, only 2 questions, please don't give your statements, but you have, because this kind of panel of speakers you wouldn't find easily. So ask questions, very brief 2 questions from them before I close.
People's movement, but we find that in Kerala, People's Library movement is a failure. As a movement for cultural development, for training people in democracy, it is a success. But library movement is something else. Village library should be a community information center which people can access for anything and everything related to their day-to-day life. And IPLM is becoming successful because it is not only a people's movement or people's movement, it is connecting people, technology, government and professionalism. So when we say that it is a people's library movement, we will go to the way in which Kerala's People's Library movement has gone. What they cannot achieve for the last 60 years movement, you have achieved in some 5 or 6 years.
Sir, can you please, because we are...
So my question is that view that it should be made a people's library movement correct? Can we follow that? That is my question.
So can we also have the next question quickly?
Please.
So that
I have a question here.
who is the...
I'm Seema Chaudhary.
Okay.
I needed to, in fact, a sentence which Subir said resonated very well here. I'm a mother of 2, and I have been working with women who are illiterates, and their children come to my school. And I have found that it is not just about your library, and as you said, it is a community movement that needs to be done. I would ask, would you agree that it should be a mother's movement actually, because it is right before even a child is born in the womb, the child actually responds, and that is something that I have found it to be very, very true. And from the time the child is born, the visuals I don't know, but the fact that the child can listen, it works very well. An illiterate mother is taught how to go through the notebooks by just seeing कि लाल निशान कितने लगे हुए हैं और कितने दिनों से लाल निशान नहीं लगे हुए हैं, and they are able to monitor their children.
Yeah.
So,
Can you be a little brief and ask your question directly, please?
So what I would really ask is that, would you please concentrate on these mothers who can actually, they don't need reading material. They just need that their children's interests need to be fired. So you can just tell them that वो रोटी के राजा की कहानी बता सकती है या वो पानी की रानी की कहानी बता सकती है. अचार अगर बच्चे ने नहीं खाया वो भाग सकता है थाली से, या ये इमेजिनेशन ये मदर को सिर्फ फायर करने की जरूरत है.
So she has probably understood. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you short, but we have no time. So she would.
Short question
Mukhtar
from
Sahib,
me.
okay.
And I will not go long.
Yeah.
Only thing I want to ask that in this explosion of knowledge resource is not an impediment. It is operating as an impediment that how to select the book and what to read. Is there any organization from the panelists who can recommend the books for different ages, for different communities, for different community requirements? I tell you, in Jammu and Kashmir, what we did this year, we tried to introduce books on prescription related to anxiety, related to distress. So, should some organization recommend such type of books for different ages and different needs of society?
He made a question that should be a pupils' movement. I fully advocate for the pupils' movement because in Kerala, because of the WellNet library movement, now the total assets of the library movement of Kerala is 25,000 crores. This is not done by the government. This is it is donated by the government, by the people. The people have started. When Mr. Panikkar went round in the villages, he had a good rapport to the people, and people donated the land, building, books, infrastructure, everything. Now the government says that 25,000 crores as a...
No. So he's responding to the
Responding to that, Dr. Aman Nair's question. Because even the British historians say the Kerala's development was because of the library movement. The cornerstone for Kerala's development was because of the popular library movement. If it is a government movement, nothing will move. That's why we want IPLM to lead, because unless public are not cooperating with this, what can we do? Nothing can be done. So we have to make a popular movement, community-driven initiative.
Sorry,
the community-driven initiative has to be taken.
My question to Mr. Balgopal.
Sorry. Excuse me, sir. I'm really sorry because we have overshot the session, so we are not going to take. Sorry,
No,
sir.
we'll just move on to the next.
I am so sorry, sir. Please don't respond. I'm urging you. Please don't.
Responding, just question to Mr. Balgopal.
No. Please. It could be done. I mean, during our tea time, I would ask Geeta to respond.
I
Please,
have got
sir.
the guests for the next session already
So
here. And
I'll
it's
just say
difficult for
briefly
us
on
to
this
manage.
other two things very quickly. It's generally mothers are much better at most things, and that's why fathers don't do much. So I would suggest don't leave fathers out because that's a great excuse and it doesn't help in my experience. Secondly, all of us and our group in particular, we have a lot of experience and expertise in selecting books. We also produce that guide to good books, which we can share with you later. But I think what you are asking for really is that, if you're from Kashmir, if I'm not mistaken, so what would work is if there were a kind of reader survey, and if we could identify some needs of your potential readers, we could then select from what is available, and we could also suggest what more needs to be developed, because a lot of needs are not yet. So there is part prescription available, but some part we have to work on.
I'm sorry, I have to now close the session. It has been wonderful, wonderful talking to all of you, and I can assure you they are going to be here for the tea time. You can interact with them more. But thank you so much for all your inputs. Yeah.
So we've got tokens for everyone. Mr. Balagopal, Mr. Subir Shukla, Mr. Himanshu Giri. Ms. Geeta Malhotra, Mr. Saurav Banerjee, and one, of course, for you, Dr. Shubhangi Sharma. Ladies and gentlemen, we are supposed to be having tea outside, but we've really exceeded and gone into the next session now for time. So if I could request those of you who really need tea to step outside, quickly have a cup and come back in. But we are going to move into the next session because we've got guests who have arrived here from outside who need to be on the days now for the next session. Thank you very much.